there are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. For me, that moment was a phone call. One call that destroyed my world and changed me forever. My name is André Bamberski. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't violent. I was just a father. And I loved my daughter more than anything. Her name was Kalinka. 14 years old. She was my sunshine. Bright, strong, athletic. She loved swimming. She played the piano. She had dreams. In the summer of 1982, she went to Germany to visit her mother. Her mother had remarried to a man named Dr. Dieter Krombach. A respected doctor. Wealthy. Calm. Cold. Then came that phone call. Your daughter is dead. No cause. No emotion. Just those 4 words. Dead? How? Why? I couldn't breathe. I flew to Germany immediately. I needed answers. But instead, I found locked doors, cold faces, and something far more terrifying than grief: silence. They told me she died of heat stroke. But Kalinka was young and healthy. She was found in bed, pale, still, with no signs of illness the day before. I demanded the autopsy report. And what I read was a horror movie. Needle marks on both arms. Unknown substances injected. Her genitals removed before the second autopsy. Her stepfather, the doctor, had administered the injections himself. And yet, no investigation. No police questions. No arrest. They said it was an accident. But I knew it wasn't. It was a crime. A true crime. But no one wanted to hear the truth. The German authorities refused to pursue it. They protected Krombach. Was it politics? Corruption? Or simply indifference? I don't know. But I knew one thing. My daughter didn't die by accident. She was silenced. And they were trying to bury the truth with her. That's when I changed. Grief became rage. Sorrow became obsession. Injustice became a mission. I began to investigate the case myself. Page by page. Document by document. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't a detective. But I was a father. And I had something stronger than any badge: purpose. I followed every lead. I talked to doctors, nurses, neighbors. I tracked Krombach's medical history. And what I discovered chilled me. Kalinka wasn't his only victim. There were other girls. Same method: sedation, assault, denial. But each time, he walked away. He was protected. By silence. By systems. By people who didn't care, because it wasn't their daughter. So I decided. If they wouldn't fight for her, I would. Even if it meant breaking the rules. Even if it meant becoming something darker. This isn't just a story. It's a warning. Because what do you do when the justice system turns its back? What do you do when the man who hurt your child smiles on television as a free man? What do you do when your child cries for justice from the grave and no one listens? You fight. Silently. Relentlessly. Until someone listens. Or until you have nothing left. This is one of those true horror stories that leaves scars. Not just in the heart, but in the soul. And it's only the beginning. I'm André Bamberski. And this is the story of how I hunted my daughter's killer. Not for revenge. But for truth. Even if the truth destroys everything. They thought I would give up. They thought that once the coffin was in the ground, the case would die with it. They didn't know me. They didn't know what a father is capable of when justice is denied. After Kalinka's funeral, I returned to France with one goal: uncover the truth and bring Krombach to justice. But this wasn't just about one man. It was about an entire system built to protect itself. A system that cared more about politics than a little girl's life. I filed reports. Appealed to German prosecutors. Nothing. They ignored me. They blocked me. I contacted French officials, hoping they'd care. At first, they did. In 1995, France tried Krombach in absentia, without him even being there. He was convicted for involuntary manslaughter. But Germany refused to extradite him. He stayed in Munich. A free man. Still practicing medicine. Still smiling. And I was told to move on. But I couldn't. I saw his face every time I closed my eyes. I saw Kalinka, alone, scared, poisoned in a bedroom far from home. I had failed to protect her once. I wouldn't fail again. So I made a decision. If justice wouldn't come to him, I would bring him to justice. Years passed. I spent everything I had. I lost friends. I lost sleep. But I gained something far more dangerous. Determination. I hired private detectives. They followed Krombach. Watched his every move. And then, we made a plan. A plan no father should ever have to make. In 2009, 27 years after Kalinka's death, the moment came. Krombach was walking to his car in Munich. A van pulled up. 3 men grabbed him. Blindfolded him. And drove him across the border. They left him in front of a courthouse in France. Bleeding. Bruised. But alive. And finally, France had him. It made headlines across Europe. Kidnapped doctor delivered to justice. Some called me a criminal. Others called me a hero. I wasn't either. I was a father. And I had waited nearly 3 decades for this moment. The trial began in 2011. Krombach, now in his 70s, looked weak. But I knew what he was. Behind that frail face was a monster. Testimonies were heard. Medical experts confirmed Kalinka was likely sexually assaulted. The drugs in her system made no medical sense. And Krombach's story changed with every word. This wasn't just a true crime, it was horror. Real, raw horror. The kind they make horror movies about. But this wasn't fiction. It was my daughter's life. And her death. Finally, the verdict came. 15 years in prison. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Because justice came too late. Because Kalinka was still gone. Because 15 years is nothing compared to 30 years of pain. But I wasn't done. Because this story isn't just about one man going to prison. It's about what happens when a father refuses to be silent. When grief becomes fire. When love turns into a weapon stronger than fear. This isn't just one of those true horror stories. It's a war. Between a father and a broken world. And I chose to fight. People think justice is the end. But for me, it was just another beginning. Because after you spend 30 years chasing a killer, what's left? What's left of a father? What's left of a life? When the verdict came in, 15 years in prison, I should have felt peace. The courtroom was silent. Journalists scribbled. Cameras flashed. But all I could think about was Kalinka. She would have been 43. Maybe married. Maybe with kids of her own. Instead, she was a ghost. Frozen in time. 14. Forever. And I was a man shaped by loss. Krombach was taken away in cuffs. For the first time in 3 decades. I didn't see him walking free. But I didn't celebrate. Because justice had come too late. Too slow. Too soft. This wasn't just a sentence. It was a reminder of how much had been lost. The media exploded. They called me the father who took justice into his own hands. Some praised me. Others called me a vigilante. I didn't care. Let them talk. They hadn't buried their child. They hadn't stared into a system that looked them in the eye and turned away. This was no fairy tale. It was one of the darkest true horror stories Europe had ever seen. I gave interviews. Spoke to newspapers. But the truth is, I hated the attention. This wasn't about headlines. It was about a promise. A promise I whispered to my daughter's grave. I won't stop. Not until he pays. And I kept that promise. But justice came with a price. I lost friends. I lost money. I lost time. And somewhere along the way, I lost myself too. You see, when you fight darkness for too long, it stains you. You stop sleeping. You stop living. You become the fight itself. There were nights I sat alone, staring at Kalinka's photo, wondering if she would have been proud. Or if she would have asked me to stop. Would she have said, "Papa, let go"? Or "Thank you"? I'll never know. I don't tell this story to be admired. I tell it so that no parent ever has to do what I did. So that no child's voice is ignored. So that no killer hides behind power again. Because justice shouldn't require kidnapping. Justice shouldn't take 30 years. And justice shouldn't break the innocent along the way. Some call what I did revenge. Maybe it was. But it was also love. A love so strong, it refused to die. This is more than a true crime case. More than just another horror story. It's a warning. About silence. About failure. About what happens when institutions protect the guilty and abandon the victims. My name is André Bamberski. I am not a hero. I am not a villain. I am just a father. Who couldn't walk away. Kalinka has been gone for over 40 years now. And yet, every morning, I still see her face. Smiling. Innocent. Full of life. Frozen in memory. Some days, I still expect the phone to ring. To hear her voice. To pretend it was all just a bad dream. But dreams don't last 40 years. And nightmares don't end with justice. After Krombacher's conviction, I tried to return to normal life. But what is normal, after you've spent 3 decades chasing a ghost? I had become the man obsessed with justice. The man who kidnapped a killer. The man who wouldn't stop. People pointed. Reporters called. Netflix even made a documentary about me, my daughter's killer. Millions watched. Millions judged. But they didn't know the silence I lived through. They didn't hear my daughter's voice echoing in the dark. They didn't sit in courtrooms, year after year, as doors slammed shut. They just saw the ending. Not the journey. Let me tell you something. Justice is not what they show in movies. It's not clean. It's not fast. And it never, ever, comes free. You pay for it. With time. With money. With your soul. And sometimes, even with your sanity. But would I do it all again? Yes. Without hesitation. Because Kalinka deserved the truth. She deserved dignity. And she deserved a father who wouldn't back down. They called me many things. Vigilante. Madman. Hero. But I'm not interested in labels. I was a father. And that is all the reason I ever needed. What scares me isn't what happened to Kalinka. What scares me is that it can still happen. Even now. In modern Europe. In the 21st century. There are still predators in white coats. Still courts that don't listen. Still families screaming into silence. And that's why I tell this story. So you remember. So you stay awake. So you fight when it matters. This is not just one of those true horror stories. This is a mirror. A reflection of what happens when justice sleeps. When innocence is buried. And when love refuses to die. Kalinka didn't live to see justice. But maybe she knows. Maybe she sees. Maybe she's proud. And maybe that's enough. My name is André Bamberski. And this was the fight of my life. Not for vengeance. Not for glory. But for a promise. A father's promise, carved into memory. Etched into fire. Carried into history.